Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the B-Sides. If you are just joining for the first time, my name is Brianna Gravatt, and I am a writer, an author, sorry, a writer and an author, same kind of thing, right? My English is not so good. I am a writer, a poet, and an art historian. And for 5 months of this year, I went out on a pilgrimage from India to the west of Spain. And last week we spoke about my time that I spent in India. And this week we're going to talk about the weeks that I spent in Lebanon. And there were a lot of skeptical people out there that were like, why are you going to Lebanon? And I was like, have you ever heard of hummus? Like, for real. Like, have you not ever heard of hummus? Because, hands down, Lebanon has the greatest hummus and the best food in the entire world. So, if that's not a reason to go somewhere, God, then I must be just an awful traveler because that's why I go places. But for real, hummus aside, or hummus like right in front of you because that's where it belongs. I went to Lebanon because, as I said before, I am an art historian, and and not only does Lebanon have the some of the oldest and best preserved Roman ruins in the entire world. As an art historian, my area of concentration is photography, specifically war photography. And in studying photography and war photography, I came across photographer after photographer that they all said the same thing, that there has yet to be an image created that stops war, that prevents it from happening. And that is the hope of a lot of people that go out and create and produce these photographs and capture these images, that they think, oh, maybe, just maybe, this one is going to show the world how crazy it is and how stupid war is and how unnecessary it is. But unfortunately, it is a failing endeavor. And wars still happen as they were happening in next door to Lebanon when I was there. And they happened in Lebanon years and years ago before I was there. So I went because I am interested not only in war, but what happens after war. How people go on, how resilient people are, how hopeful they are, how determined they are. And I found that in Rwanda when I went a few years ago. And that was my hope on this pilgrimage, was to see that despite war or in spite of war, that we go on and we have purpose and we create. And when I first arrived in Lebanon, of course, I was hesitant. I had never been to the Middle East before. I had never been to a Muslim country. I had never been to that region. And so I rolled up to the airport with my passport in my hands, and I'm like hiding it underneath me. And I'm like, nobody can see that it's blue. No one can see that I'm American. And I took me about 5 minutes after I got to the front of the line of customs to realize how stupid that was, because the customs official took one look at my passport, stamped it, and said, "Welcome to Lebanon." And when I went outside to get a cab to the hostel that I was to stay at for the next few weeks, they said the same thing. I had my backpack on, and they're like, "Welcome to Lebanon." Got in the cab, "Welcome to Lebanon." And I'm like, thanks. And so we're driving down the street, and the sun was just setting over the Mediterranean, and I was speaking to my cab driver in broken Arabic and English. And he drops me off at the hostel, and now it's dark, so I don't wander around that much that night. But the next day, in the light of the sun, I do what I do in every country I visit for the first time. I walk. I walk as far as I can, as long as I can, and I walk from one end of Lebanon to the other. And I just went to explore and to discover what Beirut was all about. And yeah, I could lie to you and say that there was no, everything was repaired, everything was, the way it was when people still called it the Paris of the East. But there were so many buildings with so many bullet holes. There were so many buildings bombed out, and I could have went to Beirut and seen only that, but that wasn't why I went to Lebanon. I went to Lebanon to see so much more than that, and to see what life was like after war. And so after walking all day, I found myself at a cafe, and I was sitting by myself, and I would say I was minding my own business, but I'm a terrible liar, and I never mind my own business. So I'm sitting and I'm eating my hummus, of course, and my fattoush, and a couple is sitting next to me, and I am doing my best to eavesdrop as what to what they were saying. And they're speaking in Arabic, and they're speaking in French, and they're speaking in English. And my Arabic is subpar. My French needs some practicing, and my English is not so good. But I'm listening anyway, and I'm just leaning in. I'm like, oh, what are they talking about? And it turns out that the conversation that they were having was the man was saying to the woman how important it is to seek truth. And I just sat there and just stopped eating, because that's why I was in Lebanon, was to seek truth. So I leaned in closer and closer, totally creepy about it, but leaning in nevertheless. And they finally noticed how bad of an eavesdropper, how good of an eavesdropper that I was. And we all started talking, and we wound up talking for a long time. And that is how I met my friend Mona. And so at the end of our conversation, after we spoke about truth and life and war and love and all of these things, Mona and I exchanged phone numbers, and she invited me to spend time with her while I was in Lebanon. And I'm like, heck yeah, yeah, I'll go hang out with you. I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll do something. And so that weekend, Mona invites me to her house in the mountains, and she picks me up from my hostel, and we are sitting there, and she's telling me all about her life up until that moment. She was talking about what it was like to live through war, what it was like to grow up in a bomb shelter, what it was like to come out of that war and to experience the life that she's experiencing now. And she overlaid that history with, she called it her heritage. And then she would speak about all the things that are happening now. And so we went to her family's house, and we just had a feast. And what I loved about being there, being with Mona and her family, was that they reminded me so much of my family back home. They had a spread of food from one end of a table to another. It was like if I walked from one end of Lebanon to another, one end of Beirut to another, that was their table, with obviously hummus and fish and salad and breads, and God, at the end of the meal there was baklava, and there was just so much food, and we all sat there, and it didn't matter that I was American and they were Lebanese, and I was raised Christian and they were Muslim. What mattered was that we were sharing in the present moment with awareness of the past and not fear of the future. Just living in that present, living in that moment, and enjoying the company we were keeping. And it made me realize that if we are able to do that, if we are able to share stories over food and just regard one another as people, then maybe we cannot ignore the buildings with bullet holes in them. And maybe we cannot ignore wars that happened and continue to happen. But maybe we can press forward and or look forward to a future without that. And if we had that peace, if we were able to have peace in that moment, why can that peace not be extended further and longer? And so, thank you, Mona and her family, for inviting me in to your family and making me one of your own and sharing with me your lives, your food, your love. And thank you for showing me that that peace is possible.